Hi, ladies and gents. Hello. Hi. Thank you. Just to give you a little overview of what we're going to be doing, we're going to be bringing the panel up for a start for 15 minutes past 11. If you guys could take your seats now so we can all be ready, because then we'll get the most time out of it. There's going to be a 20-minute panel discussion and then 10 minutes of Q&A. In those 10 minutes, the organisers have asked if you could make sure that they're sort of open questions for the whole panel and not just directed at sort of at Greta the whole time, because they're all here to talk and they'd all appreciate that a great deal, so thank you. At the end of it, there'll be like a photo opportunity, so any pictures you need to take, they'll be sort of standing. Whilst it's going on, if anyone's got any flashes, please turn them off. You know, there should hopefully be ample lighting. And then when the session's finished, please can we just let them go and leave in sort of relative peace. And so, you know, hopefully you'll get your questions in. Don't mob them on exit, please. Stay in your seats if you can. Thank you all for coming today. We'll bring them up. But yeah, if you could get seated, if you're going to seat, just to clear the way, make it easy for us. So thank you. See you in a bit.
3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, good. Right, ladies and gentlemen, what a rare privilege we have before us now as well. We are going to have a debate with your questions. We're going to go about 30, possibly 40 minutes, depending on how we go and depending on how the conversation goes. And the conversation here with this amazing panel is treating the climate crisis like a crisis. This is going to be a conversation on rapidly accelerating the energy transition as well. The topics covered will include the fact that the climate crisis remains at the heart of global attention, and it must not slip down the ranking in terms of top priorities. And I can tell you already, ladies and gentlemen, that that is going to come up straight away, because in the rarefied halls of the World Economic Forum, there is a danger, there is a concern that the climate crisis is slipping down the agenda. We're going to talk about 1.5 degrees. Is it dead? The pathway is narrow but still achievable. I think everybody on this panel still believes that as well. Clean energy transition is at a turning point. It is happening, but it's not fast enough, according to many, many people. Again, I think what you're going to find today is there's a lot of accord between what the IEA is saying, which, let me remind you, represents the OECD nations, represents the consuming nations on energy products, and a lot more than that as well. And there is an urgent need to scale up actions and investments. Advanced economies especially need to do more. I already know what this panel thinks about the COP process. So should you, if you've been paying attention. I'll tell you who's here. What an amazing meeting of minds. Dr. Fatih Birol is someone I've known for many years, and I've had the privilege of a lot of private conversations with and a lot of public conversations with as well. He, of course, is Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. Vanessa Nakate is a Ugandan climate justice activist, UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. It's lovely to see you today. Luisa Neubauer is a climate activist. Hello, Luisa. And founder of Fridays for Future Germany. We also have Helena Gualinga, who is an Ecuadorian environmentalist and human rights activist. It's lovely to see you. And Greta Thunberg, who is a Swedish climate justice activist. One or two of you may well know the ladies here as well. So there are a lot of questions. You've got a lot of questions as well. But I'm just going to start off with a very open question to the people here today. And I'm going to start off, and I'll just go from my immediate right, and I'll work all the way down to Dr. Birol at the end. Greta Thunberg, I'm just going to ask you what your message is for the World Economic Forum here today. And it's very nice to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for, so we are right now in Davos, where basically the people who are mostly fueling the destruction of the planet, the people who are at the very core of the climate crisis, the people who are investing in fossil fuels, etc., and yet somehow these are the people that we seem to rely on solving our problems, where they have proven time and time again that they are not prioritizing that. They are prioritizing self-greed, corporate greed, and short-term economic profits above people and above planet. And we seem to be listening to them rather than the people who are actually affected by the climate crisis, the people who are living on the front lines, and that kind of tells us the situation, how absurd this is. But the people who we really should be listening to are not here. Instead, we are bombarded with messages from people who are basically the people who are causing this crisis.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Well, for me, coming here, I didn't know exactly what my message would be, because what haven't we said and what haven't we done? What haven't we, communicated enough? The climate crisis is evident in the areas that are most impacted. Most cases, these areas are least responsible for the crisis, where people are stretching their livelihoods, people are trying to survive, clinging to their lives and just trying to make it for another day, to make it for another week, to make it for another hour, another minute. So for me, my message is the climate crisis goes beyond statistics and data points. It's about the people. And very so often in this place, there is a disconnection between, what is being discussed and what is happening on the ground. There is a mismatch between how people understand, the urgency of the crisis here and what is happening in places like Turkana, one of the regions that is being impacted by the drought in the Horn of Africa, which I was able to visit last year. And I met different mothers, different children that are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. And it is devastating to continue to see what the climate crisis is doing to communities and doing to children and different mothers across the world. And one specific child that stood out for me is a child that I met with his grandmother in a hospital where cases of severe acute malnutrition are referred for treatment. And I remember meeting the grandmother and her explaining how, it took them long to find the treatment. And by the time they brought, the child to the hospital, he was in a wasted situation as described by the doctors and the nurses. And she was just praying that the child would survive. And a few hours later, we learned that this child had passed away, and this could have been our preventable death and a preventable crisis. So I feel frustrated too. I don't know what else to say, because the urgency of the crisis is evident and people are dying, and it's like our leaders are playing games and they don't see the challenge that is happening. I am frustrated and I'm so hurt by what is happening and the inaction. Why is it so hard for people to understand the urgency of what is happening? We could save very many lives, because so many people are stretching to try and survive the next minute, the next hour, the next week, the next day. And here the discussions are on growth, development. Why don't we slow down a bit and talk about lives and people? It's just frustrating.
Vanessa, thank you very much indeed for that. Helena.
I come from an indigenous community in the Amazon rainforest, and for decades we've seen how our forest has been cut down, again in the name of development, for oil exploration, for extractivism. The same industry that has caused the climate crisis is also destroying our territories. And while they're at it, they're also committing human rights violations. We don't see the sense of urgency reflected in action. Indigenous communities, indigenous peoples, youth, scientists, we've all been pointing towards a direction where the oil industry they're not going there. They're not going there. The world leaders are not going there. And something that Vanessa said, like, we're frustrated, but what else can we do? We've said everything, we've done everything we can, and still we're going into this really dangerous direction. We're taking a really dangerous path, and we're already seeing how people are suffering on the ground. We see that every day in our lives, and it's It's completely insane that we are allowing this. And we have people here in Davos that are enabling that through government, through investing in fossil fuel, and at some point there needs to be a stop. This is criminal. This is criminal behavior, and it should be judged as so as well.
Luisa.
Yes, I'm a climate justice activist from Germany, and I spent the last week with Greta and many others defending livelihoods against coal diggers in the Rhineland in Germany, which is the largest single source of CO2 of the whole of Europe. And many people then said, oh, it's an interesting change of scenery coming from the mud in Luetzerath to Davos, whereas we walked through the dirty mud in Luetzerath, and now we in Davos witnessing dirty deals being made, so I'm not sure how much of a change that actually is. Chancellor Scholz yesterday said that the future belongs to renewables, and I think there's one part of the sentence that he left out, which is the future does not belong to the fossil fuels. And if we look at the business plans, however, of the big fossil fuel industries worldwide, 96% of oil and gas industry plan to expand, even though we know that the science is very clear, the numbers are very clear, there cannot be any fossil fuel expansion happening everywhere. Yet the business plans and the investments plans, they tell a different story. And what does it mean? What kind of message is coming from that? And the message is, I think, quite clear. The future will not belong to the fossil fuel industries, but they won't lead into that future themselves. As long as fossil fuels get to make the rules of the end of the fossil fuel era, there will not be an end of the fossil fuel era. Someone will have to draw the line. Someone will have to say enough is enough and end the destruction. And that end, and I think we can be certain here, will not come from the industries themselves. And it will not come from slow plans to transition to somewhere. Right now, we see that across the world, an expansion and an intention is being planned when it comes to fossil fuels. So as long as fossil fuel industries are planning to expand, someone else will have to say no to that. That's where we're turning to the EIA, that's where we're turning to governments worldwide, that's why we're going to the streets. And we also know that as long as investors like BlackRock, like Deutsche Bank, like Qatar, who are the lead investors of RWE, who we fought against last week, as long as they plan to invest in new fossil fuels, they are on the wrong side here. And maybe they don't want to know that, but we can be very certain about that, and we're not going to shy away from spreading that message.
Thank you, Luisa. Look, one thing that's very clear is that seeing four very powerful activists here on the outside of WEF is very interesting. But in terms of bringing the dialogue with powerful institutions such as the IEA, I think it is absolutely fabulous that A, the four of you are here, but B, that Fatih, you have come as well, because not only are you here, and I think it's great that you are, but you've also got a view to what's going on in there. Now, the ladies have already said that there is inaction going on inside the halls of the Congress. They have already said that there is no sense of action despite the words, despite we've just had COP27. I was at COP26, so we're at COP21, 15. How different is what you're hearing here to the sense of urgency in there, Fatih?
Thanks, Steve. First of all, many thanks for the invitation. I think me being here is already a very important signal that I wanted to give the world. But may I first things first, may I first thank Greta. Vanessa, dear Vanessa, thank you very much. Helena and Luisa, thank you very much what you have been doing. Steve, my message is the following. Energy is responsible about 80% of the emissions causing climate change. Okay? If we are not able to transform the energy sector, we have no chance whatsoever to reach our climate targets. So we have to transform the energy sector, making it clean, making it secure. And when I look at today, the international agenda, the global agenda, including here in Davos, While we have to see that the climate change needs to get more attention, unfortunately, the attention to climate change is sliding down. I find it rather worrying, and it is the reason I thought it is now time to ring the alarm bells, bring the climate crisis together with other crises, the energy crisis, food crisis, at the top of the international policy agenda. And I think this is my main message. Climate agenda needs to get, it is a priority in the agenda of the decision.
Let me just get something straight, Fatih, because the activists believe there can be no new fossil fuels projects in order to hit 1.5 degrees. You believe there should be no more fossil fuel exploration, production, new facilities to reach 1.5 degrees. Why is it that the most preeminent organisation, perhaps globally, certainly amongst consuming nations, is saying that, and yet new production is going ahead?
So, Steve, the issue is we have to keep the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. If it goes above that, the rather fragile equilibrium of our planet will be distorted. We'll be all in trouble. In order to do that, we need to get energy from clean, carbon-free energy sources. Okay? And to do that, the magic word is investment. Today, investment in clean energy. Today, the world invests about $1.5 trillion. In order to be in line with our climate targets, it needs to go to $4 trillion, clean energy investments. And most of them need to come from the developing countries, hopefully with the help of the rich advanced countries. Now, if we do that, if we bring our energy from clean energy sources, then we don't need any more coal, we don't need any more oil and gas, new investments there. But the point of departure is making clean energy investments and having a clean, secure energy future for all. And there is enough money worldwide, there is enough capital. What we have to do is capital and clean energy projects, especially in developing countries, need to meet. And what is missing, in my view, is the international political will. If it was there, this would have happened because we have enough sun, we have enough wind, and electric cars are growing. There is a lot of technological innovation, and we have a lot of potential to see the clean energy to dominate. But unfortunately, what we are seeing today is there is a transition happening, but not at the pace that we would like to see, especially once again in the emerging and developing world.
Thank you, Fatih. Greta, you have spoken inside the realms of the COP process. You have spoken outside of the UN FCCC process. You have been inside WEF talking, and now you're outside. I've done a lot of work just looking at the way you've changed, and you just seem to be on the outside now rather than talking to people on the inside. And I think that's a great shame, because I've been speaking to some amazing people in there the last week, including the Pakistan Minister for Climate Change, who is incredibly powerful, about 1,000-kilometre lakes that just appeared, about farmers having to deal with 50-degree plus heat as well. Do you not feel that your very strong voice actually would continue to do good work if you were actually talking to those powerful people and to those people and just giving them some leadership?
Well, first of all, there are already activists doing that, and I think that if there should be activists inside speaking to these people, it should be those on the front lines and not privileged people like me who are not experiencing the first-hand consequences of the climate crisis. But then again, I think that right now the changes that we need are not very likely to come from the inside. Rather, I believe they will come from the bottom up, so to speak. Because without public pressure, without massive public pressure from the outside, at least in my experience, these people are going to go as far as they possibly can. As long as they can get away with it, they will continue to invest in fossil fuels. They will continue to throw people under the bus for their own gain. So I believe that the changes we need right now needs to happen on the outside. We need to build and create a critical mass of people who demand change, who demand justice. And of course, we could do that also from the inside, but yeah.
I mean, Helena, Ecuador is suffering its own concerns and deforestation and oil groups and gas groups and what have you. Just tell us again where you see the campaign going forward, because I think many of us feel that we have to be pragmatic in terms of working with and understanding the pressure from the outside as well. How do you see the campaign going forward from here?
I completely agree with Greta that we need to build massive movement of people that are demanding change and that are demanding justice. And when we are talking about the energy transition, when we're talking about the green transition, we also need to make sure that that is just. And I think that's really, really important, that we have voices from the places that are being affected both by climate change, but also by the place what the energy transition would mean for communities on the ground, vulnerable communities, and I think that perspective really needs to be taken into account by the private sector, and it's a perspective that cannot be left out, because if we do that, we're leaving out people again, just like we've done during the entire climate crisis, and I would like to. Together with Greta, Vanessa, Louisa, and I, we've created a cease and desist letter to oil CEOs, urging the oil CEOs to phase out from new fossil fuel. We know that they knew. There's a report that's come out saying that they knew way before us what they were doing when they were exploring for oil. They knew what the consequences would be of CO2 gas emissions. They knew the irreversible consequences, the huge impact it would have on people's livelihood, the huge impact it would have on the environment. We launched this a couple of days ago, and we're almost reaching 900,000 signatures, which really shows the commitment of youth, what really shows the commitment of civil society and people, and the change that we are demanding. And this is a message to these CEOs and decision makers of how urgently we want and we need change.
And we are very happy to see that this message is in fact in line with what the EIA says very clearly, that there cannot be any fossil fuel expansion happening anywhere. Fossil fuel industries had 40 years time to prove that they're up to anything good. They clearly failed. And so the message is very clear, and this is not just clear to us activists, it is clear to people everywhere, especially those fighting at the front line. So we are very happy for you to be here today, and we would very much invite you to carry on this message with us, Mr. Birol.
So we already have our open letter on 18th of May 2021, when we made the clean transformation of the global energy sector, net zero 2050. We made our report. So we are very happy to see that there will be a big increase, hopefully, for clean energy investments, not fossil investments, so that we can both have energy, because energy is a good thing. What is better is the emissions. So we'll have both energy, and we are going to reduce the emissions and their impact on the climate. So I am very happy that our activist colleagues here are pushing this agenda forward.
Louisa, let me just come back to you, and a little gentle pushback as well, because I understand what's been going on at Garzweiler, and I understand why you were there as well. But when you look at the longer message from Herr Scholz, he said the following: we aim to be 100% energy from renewable sources by 2035. Wind and solar to reach 80% by 2030. Germany will be climate neutral by 2045. This is a good progression. This is a good result in many ways. There are other crises going on in the world. The catchphrase here, and they love a catchphrase here at WEF, is polycrisis. Keeping the lights on in Europe, fighting against the Russians in Ukraine as well. This has created new dynamics and other crises. And I understand what all of you are saying, including Fatih, about climate initiatives slipping down the agenda, but actually the short-term remedies to actually keeping the lights on in Europe, action had to be made. And I know you're going to push back at me there.
Excellent question. Well, what we see since really the climate movement started really emerging in a different scale across the globe, there has been a response by leaders, and that was a friendly message to the PR departments for more green headlines. And so we are well aware that leaders across the world, and also Mr. Scholz, they know their vocabulary, and they know, where something net zero has to happen and something green has to, be put out. But we don't say listen to the science for a joke. We say, and I think that is clear to people across the world, what effectively counts is the numbers. It's a science. And when we look at what is behind all those big promises, in many cases, and that is the case in Germany, what we see is a public breakup with the Paris Agreement that is being performed. And when I look at countries like Germany, we are on the top 5 of global, of the top polluters worldwide. There are few countries that are as responsible as Germany and the G7, of course. Who would we turn to if it comes to sticking to pledges made in Paris? Who other countries are we expect to provide the finance, to provide the industrial transformation, if not those countries, if they don't, start to deliver? And so, luckily enough, the science is clear, the numbers is clear, and we don't have to be fooled anymore. And people are rising up everywhere. Just the other week, there were 30,000 people protesting with us against the extension of the coal mine, with support from across the world. And we're really seeing that the PR strategy that hoped you could just market away the climate crisis is not working out, whereas the people are there and they are willing to tell the truth.
Steve, can I say something here? I think we can have some, when we look at the energy world today, we can have some slight optimism, legitimate optimism here. Because last year, 2022, the amount of renewable capacity coming to markets was the record high. We have never seen so much renewables coming around the world. Very good. The efficiency improvements, very strong, and a lot of clean energy technologies are growing. The issue is there are two issues here. One, they are not growing fast enough they should be to be in line with 1.5. The second, for me, the nerve center of the problem, the emerging and developing countries in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. There is, I think, a moral responsibility of the advanced economies to support the clean energy transition in the emerging world. This is key, in my view. I
absolutely agree. And I want to ask Vanessa and Greta a question on this, different questions. Vanessa, one of the key parts of the UN FCC process and COP27 has been that actually financing for developing nations is being seen as absolutely key to the success. We can't just have the rich West finding renewables if there isn't support for the developing nations. Are you seeing any evidence of that on your travels and of course, your heartbreaking experiences? Is there any evidence that some of those promises are getting to ground zero?
Well, I can speak from the most recently established Loss and Damage Fund at COP27. It was established, but it's still an empty bucket with no money at all. And coming here at Davos, again, you mentioned something about the energy crisis, keeping the lights on for Europe and, the West. I understand that this is not the West Economic Forum. This is the World Economic Forum. And many times the discussions about the interests of the Western countries, how can we ensure that we address this, in Europe? How can we ensure that we address this? But then there's been an ongoing energy crisis, for example, in the global south and the African continent for decades, with over 600 million people with no access to basic electricity. So I think that this really needs to be treated like a world economic forum, because I think the world doesn't only constitute of Europe and the West in general. So I just really wanted to say something on that previous question that you asked, that if there is an energy crisis, it's not just in Europe, it has been there for decades, and we need the massive scale up of renewables, especially in communities that are experiencing energy poverty or that have been experiencing energy poverty for decades. So yes, there is a need for that finance for adaptation. There is a need for real money for loss and damage, because with whatever crisis that we see, it's multiple in the countries, for example, in the global south, and even the discussions of 1.5, as the ultimate space of survival, but at 1.2 degrees, it's already a living hell for so many communities across, the African continent, across the global south. So when we hear, discussions of 1.5 as, the place that will save us all, maybe it's a place that will save the Western countries, but at 1.2, it's already catastrophic for so many communities. And that's why it's really important that, we cannot have any new fossil fuel investment. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, announced that the business models of fossil fuel companies are inconsistent with human survival. They're inconsistent with human existence. He already said it's more an economic madness to make any more of these investments. So to ensure that people are protected, not just in the West, but the entire world, we must phase out all new fossil fuels, and that is coal, oil, and gas, and massively support a transition to renewable energy, especially in the global south.
Thank you.
Can I say something to support when I say Africa? Because
Yes, of
Africa,
course.
we don't talk much. Now, in sub-Saharan Africa, every second person doesn't have access to electricity. It's number one. Number two, 2 out of 3 households using primitive cook stoves for cooking, which creates a lot of respiratory diseases, especially for women and children. And it is the top 3 premature death reasons in sub-Saharan Africa. This can be solved, this problem, both of them, access to clean electricity and access to clean cooking, with a very small amount of money, enough money to pay a 1 LNG terminal in one country. You can solve the problem in entire sub-Saharan Africa, just to put in a context.
But
Of course.
I think the only challenge is that we are only discussing about the energy crisis. And like you've said, we don't talk about Africa a lot. I really picked that. And I think it's really problematic, because it's like Africa is an afterthought, or, so we're busy focusing on privileged countries while leaving out communities that have been suffering for decades. The world doesn't revolve only around the West.
Yeah. And it's not just Africa or the West, or developing versus developed, because the ramifications in terms of migration and social issues will affect the whole world if indeed these aren't addressed. Greta, a very difficult question is, how should the developing world be allowed to develop? Should we actually we can't not allow, but should it be okay for developing nations to use coal, to use oil, to use gas, to use fossil fuels, so they can industrialize, so they can keep the lights on, so they can provide feedstocks for agriculture? It's very tricky to know what developing nations should be allowed to do, rather than, again, the rich West that this concentration of a lot of this topic has been about.
First of all, I think that the term developing countries is a bit misleading. It's not like they're underdeveloped, it's more like they're overexploited by other countries like ours. And I don't think I'm in the position to tell others what to do. The climate crisis boils down to justice and what's already happened. This is a cumulative crisis. What we do, the emissions we emit, stay in the atmosphere for a very, very long time, and will continue to destabilize the biosphere for many, many generations to come. And of course, not only environmental effects, but also thus people. So who am I to say that I've had these privileges, but now others that haven't been able to do so shouldn't, because we are facing a crisis and so on? of course, that's what the very roots of this crisis is, this mindset that some people are more worth than others and so on, that we seem to be sacrificing people for this. And this just, the thing that this does is that it only puts the so-called Western world in an even more responsible position. No, not responsible, but you get what I mean. We have an even bigger responsibility. Because to compensate and to make sure that equity is at the heart of climate action, we cannot continue to overlook these effects, and it needs to be embedded in every conversation, every discourse, and yet it is still completely absent.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, we have a limited amount of time left. I'm seeing all the hands going up. This gentleman's been very patient. He's put his hand up 4 times as well. If you just tell everybody what your news organisation, who you are, and then direct your question.
Thank you. David Gevis, New York Times. This November, COP28 will be hosted in the United Arab Emirates, one of the world's largest oil producers. And the UAE has selected its head of its state-owned oil company as the head of the proceedings. Greta, what does that say to you about the proceedings, about COP, and how does it affect your expectations about what we can expect?
Greta's just asked if we can make this an open question. Maybe if one of you wants to answer, maybe you could give a conclusion on it as well afterwards. Louisa, Helena, do you want to pick up?
Well, obviously, it's ridiculous. And it's not new, though. We've seen the last COP in Egypt and how fossil fuel lobbyists flooded that space. So why should that change if, nobody who is in the position of power demands those places to be working towards justice and not just towards more lobby deals?
I just think it sends a message also where we're headed right now. If we're putting the heads of fossil fuel companies to lead climate negotiations. We've had them investing and in COPs for decades now, and we've seen where that has led us, which is nowhere. There's a huge interest of conflict there, and it just sends this message of actually not taking it seriously. And I think it's exactly what they're doing. They're not taking this seriously.
Vanessa, do you want to pick up on this as well? No? And just find a word for your question.
I mean, lobbyists have been influencing these conferences since basically forever, and this just puts a very clear face to it. Yeah, exactly. As previous panelists have said, it's completely ridiculous.
I think who's on the next question? Is this gentleman here?
Okay. My name is Hannes Koch, Tageszeitung Taz, Berlin, Mr. Birol. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz is in favor of exploiting new gas resources off the coast of Senegal, West Africa, and he argues these gas resources would be a bridge for developing countries to get rid of coal power plants. What do you think of that argument?
Now, first of all, as I said, Africa, we have to look at Africa very, very closely. Now, in terms of electricity generation, I believe almost all the new electricity generation in sub-Saharan Africa needs to come from renewables because it is cheap, especially solar. Let me give you one statistics which I find very disturbing. As I said today, in sub-Saharan Africa, 1 out of 2 people have no electricity, number one. Number two, sub-Saharan Africa has 40% of the global solar radiation, very rich. And number three, the solar is the cheapest source of electricity generation in Africa. Yet, today, the amount of solar power capacity in sub-Saharan Africa is, just to give a context, 1/3 of the solar power capacity in Belgium. Think of the map, global map. How big is sub-Saharan Africa, how many people live there, and how big is Belgium? So from that point of view, there is a huge potential for electricity generation in sub-Saharan Africa. Having said that, there are some applications, because the energy you don't need only for electricity generation, you need for other things. Food processing, desalination of water. For these things, you may need fuels which can create high temperature heat. And here you can use gas. And here I would like to say that Africa's share in global emissions is 3% today. Even if, I don't think that it will happen, but even if Africa would develop all these natural gas resources, it will only go to 3.4%. So from that point of view, I would be very careful to put Africa in a different context than other countries. You can't compare Africa with other countries here. Thank you.
Let's get a question from this lady over here.
Hi, Mariah from ITV News. This is for Dr. Birol. We know that banks, despite their net zero pledges, continue to fund new oil and gas extraction. What's the IEA's view on this? Is it problematic?
So, it is their money, first of all. It is not IEA's money. But I think I see three risks there. And because banks and others are saying they are putting this because of the energy crisis we are in. The first risk is if you today decide, even decide today, to build a new oil field, the first oil will come to the market in 6-7 years of time. It will not come tomorrow. There is a delay here. It will not be immediately ready. This is number one. Number two, I am not sure. 7 years of time, the global oil demand will still increase and we will need more oil in the future because the electric cars are growing very strongly. There will not be demand, so there may be a business risk for those banks. This is the second point. And the third point is it is a climate risk. From this 3 point of view, the timing doesn't justify this energy crisis doesn't justify this 7 years. This is a business risk. And there is also the climate crisis. In general, if I may, Steve, one shouldn't imagine to justify the Russian invasion of Ukraine some large-scale fossil fuel investments. One shouldn't use it as an excuse.
Right, let's get a question from this gentleman here. He's been very patient.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Uwe Häuser. I'm an editor with the German weekly Die Zeit. I've been listening to you, the activists, and I got a little scared in the following way. Almost all of you said, we've done everything we can, which sounded like, you're kind of reached an end, which I hope isn't true at all, because we keep needing you. And I guess my question is, which direction do you plan to take? I think there are two major weapons for to avoid, as Vanessa said on her t-shirt, these stupid bridges, as they are called, into nowhere. One is capitalism, sort of feeding the oil and gas industry with its own weapons, meaning with cheaper renewable energy, especially in the south of the world. We're far from that, but I think that's one way to go. The other is litigation. There's a lot of hope in litigation. So my question is, where do you intend to go to make sure that your influence stays high?
So what I'll do is just to say I've got time for one more question after this. So one of you, I'm not looking yet. What I want to do is, if I may start with all of you answering that question, if you would as well, and I'll start off with you, if you would, Louisa.
Should we take another question to answer two, maybe, or not?
Well, you've got two questions there anyway.
Okay.
Are you going down the litigation route, and
Okay.
what other route forward?
Well, I think it's very clear that as an activist, what we do what we do not because it's easy or because it's convenient, but because it's necessary. And we don't do it despite it's hard, but because it's hard and it's a tough run. And what we see, though, is that we are joined by forces across the globe. And luckily enough, we are more than ever. And we see the most unlikely alliances are building up. Speaking of the protest in the coal area in Germany, we were joined by farmers, by churches, by grandparents, by people from really across the place who start understanding that this is their time to act. And the idea that the climate activists will save us all, it's another myth to reassure in a time where there can't be reassurance on things. So that I think is a very important message. And speaking as someone who has successfully sued their own government, I think litigation, of course, is something that we will look at again and again and again. This is a letter to cease and desist, and I think looking at the legal context of that, it is, of course, there are more steps that can be taken there, which I think is very important. I would just like to maybe say one more thing about solving crisis, because that came up from you, Steve, but also from the audience. It's a fairy tale to tell that new fossil fuels will solve any kind of crisis. The energy crisis we're in is a fossil fuel energy crisis. It is existing only because of a singular dependency on fossil fuels, in this particular fossil fuels from Russia. And what we're seeing is that new fossil fuels don't solve energy crises in Europe, but they produce crises across the globe. And whenever someone goes ahead and starts selling a new fossil fuel project as a solution to any kind of crisis, I think it's a journalistic duty, but also a public duty to challenge this and to ask what kind of crisis to be solved and which new crisis is to be produced here, which, as we heard on the panel, is very obvious, I think.
May I add something here?
Not now, but we'll come back to that
just one line.
very briefly.
I think that the lasting solution to our energy crisis go through clean energy investments. Just wanted to.
Thank you, Fadi. Helena.
I think the reason why we do this is because we know we have something to defend. You know, I come from the rainforest. I'm living there. When I go back here, I go back to a clean river still. I go back to a rainforest that is standing, that is living, that is healthy. I go back to a people that has been fighting for decades. I have that, and I have something to defend. What I can assure you is that we will be, excuse my French, a pain in the ass for everyone who's working towards the new exploration of fossil fuels and destroying our planet. And that, I think, I speak for all.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Well, I think that, one of the challenges that I see is that there's so many people saying that they need us. There's so many people saying we are inspiring. There's so many people giving standing ovations, but few of them are joining us in our fight for climate justice. So I think that as we move forward, our activists are expected to be strong and all that, but it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating to see the inaction and to see the crisis continue to impact so many people. So I think we need to move from a place of being told that we are needed to people joining us and working with us in, whatever space that you're in, if it's in the law, if it's in the schools, if it's in media, whatever thing that you can do, like play a part in our fight for, climate justice.
Greta.
Yeah, we are nowhere near the end. We have only just begun. But no one said that this was going to be easy. It's we know that the changes that we are advocating for are not going to happen overnight, and that is why we have to stay strong during a longer period of time. But also we cannot do this on our own. The climate activists currently need to multiply many times. We need many, many more because we need help. Right now, we are still moving in the wrong direction. We are speeding in the wrong direction. The global emissions of greenhouse gases are still increasing. We are heading completely in the wrong direction. We need many, many more, so we urge everyone to join the fight for climate justice.
I have got time for one short question. I'm going to let the lady, and one short question, and I guess very brief answers, because I know you've all got to move on as well. So this lady, yeah.
Really quickly, the Inflation Reduction Act.
And who you are, sorry?
Madison Mills from Bloomberg. The Inflation Reduction Act is getting a lot of attention here at Davos this week, and other nations and global leaders are countering that legislation with their own. What do you make of that legislative tete-a-tete on climate change? Is that effective?
Why don't you start off from what you see, positive or negative, from the IRA, and then we'll just move on and just ask if the activists want to comment on this one as well.
I was, first of all, I should say, Steve, that I am a man who makes his hands dirty with data every single day, as you know, the energy data. And I have definitely a view of a legitimate optimism as far as the clean energy is concerned today. It is growing, but the problem is it is not growing fast enough to reach our climate targets. So it is not something that it is stopping, it is growing now. In addition to all the market forces, government decisions, and so on, the Inflation Reduction Act in my view, is a very transformative move from the United States, giving about $400 billion, President Biden and his government, to clean energy sources. It is solar, it is wind, it is electric cars, it is clean hydrogen, and others. So therefore, I hope other countries, and India is moving in the same direction, I hope Europe will come at a response to address the clean energy. They all together help to reach our clean energy goals. So this is my hope, and Inflation Reduction Act is a step in that direction.
So it's the public sector coming up with the carrot as well as stick. Does anyone want to comment on what's happening from the US government and what you hope other governments to do in terms of incentivizing companies to look for more green initiatives? I don't think we do there. Okay, right. Why don't I ask a very final question then? And I literally want a 10-second answer from all of you as well. I do want to end this and try and say, is there anything that you're seeing at the moment? I can tell you what I see as optimistic, but I'll tell you afterwards as well. Do you see anything at the moment going on that gives you a cause for optimism? We'll just go down the line very quickly. Greta.
The people standing up and raising their voices against all that is happening. That's the hope right now. The hope comes from the people.
Vanessa.
Same.
Helena.
Same.
And Louisa.
There were excellent last words. I think we keep it to that. The power is with the people. And as Greta said, we urge many, many more to join. The term activist itself hopefully doesn't need to exist at some point anymore, because people have understood that standing up for the right to live and for livelihood shouldn't be an act of activism, but the most common thing of all.
And maybe I can add to the people one. Also, people on the ground are not giving up. We're still putting up, again, hell of a fight.
Fatih, calls for optimism.
Now, Steve, what I see is that this challenge is really very huge. Transforming the entire energy sector, which has been in place decades and decades. And to do that, in addition to technology, government support, and so on, we need one thing, in my view, most important, to bring together a grand coalition of the people who are genuinely interested to tackle climate change, those governments, civil society, companies who are genuinely interested to tackle climate change. And I think this grand coalition is happening slowly but surely, and this gives me optimism.
And that is very similar to my optimism, the fact that we've got one of the most powerful men in energy sitting on a panel with four of the most powerful activists in climate change. So I just want to thank all of you. Dr. Fatih Birol, thank you very much indeed. It's been good to see you again. Luisa Neubauer, thank you very much indeed. Helena Gwalinga, it's really nice to meet you. Vanessa Nakate, incredibly powerful. I mean, thank you very much indeed. And Greta Thunberg as well. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. A round of applause, please. Thank you. Is that okay? You okay? Good. Oh.
All right, folks, thanks very much for your time and your patience and your respect and silence. If you could, we're going to do a quick photo with the panel, and then we're going to let them go. As I asked them previously, if you just let them get out of the room and let them go downstairs, and you can catch them on down the way. So we'll do a quick photo now. Thank you. Just pop your phones down. We'll do an iPhone call in a second. Keep your iPhone down, please. Okay, we got what we need. Thanks. As I said, just let them leave if we can. Just clear the path. Thank you.
On top of your camera bag. Nice snug jacket. Super crazy.
So, unfortunately, I can't say the actual capital, but I've read recently a person with the history of human I think
Yes.
that was good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You
too.
Good luck to you.
I hope to see you in coffee.
Yeah. Thank you. We should do some interviews here. Yeah?
Absolutely, when you're there. We're going to go over here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Smoking exclusive? So good. I smoke something different when I want to talk to God. When you get an idea of a few commandments.
See who's here? Now you made it. Good, good, good. So you have well, yeah.
I enjoyed it much more than I thought because it was good. It was yeah, great. And it was like, well, these again. So that's kind of like what line or person.
Yeah, there's one there who has to. It was like I had to scan into super res. My dad used to talk about it.
And they organize it. And they charge it. PR. Hey, I'm going to love you. Yeah, and now I spent a long time. Yeah, I'll shoot you an email. All right. Great seeing you. I like speaking. I like interaction. I like that. It's good adrenaline. That have like in airports or whatever. And we were like, I love that. That was a very good speech. Blah blah blah. So it's like we're in this. That would be ideal if I could just sometimes I have to go. The world, move to the center. What do you do? I'll refuse my forbidden. Yeah, in the meantime, we have to do events like that. I'm good friends with the journalists.
The bit that worries me is the hold of that.
Yeah, when I was exactly.
Hey, how's it going? So we are late. Yeah, okay. Let me just get the rest.
I reached out to them.
Right, yeah,
But
so
then
sorry about that. We couldn't get through this.
I found you. Are we ready to go? All right.
Yeah, sorry, I'm wrong. I know, how's it going? Hello, mate. How you doing? You? Alright, yeah.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Yeah, so sorry late.
We're just freezing. No. Yeah, 2.
Hi, how are you doing? Yeah, well, lovely to meet you. I was at AXA. Did you get the position?
What did you say?
Exactly. We went up there, yeah, we went up there. We were up there in the night.
What did you say later? We're doing it now. Oh, sorry. sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Exactly that. Exactly. Okay. And would you like me to do it? Yeah. Sorry, I'm totally wrong end of this. I thought you were with Oswald. I thought you were part of his team. Sorry. So no, it's not going to be 2 on 1. I think it's just going to be. Sorry, 2 on 1. Yes, one of us. 2 on 1. So you're both going to be on camera. Yeah. What's the line of questioning?
Davos.
Thank you. I mean, I don't mind. I'm happy to do it. Do you want to? Oh, do you want to? There's no point, but because I think you're just going to use sound from these guys. They're just going to use their sound.
Oh, they're just going to use their sound?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And picture. It's footage of these guys. I mean, you don't need the questions. I'm very happy to just ask them to pose the questions. I don't need to be on camera. These guys are on camera. So we don't need Where are you based? Where are you based? No, but are you? Oh, in London. You guys, how many of you are? 2 guns and 4 guns. Ocean. I need your name as well. Yeah, I'm Nick. Nick. This is Ocean. So you bought it sold once, collected 1,000. That's work in the ocean. We collected South, so Philippines, Indonesia. No, we sell them to this
Hello, how are you doing?
This is I used to have like 3 shorts. It's an impact on us, so at least 15% of the revenue we make sales. I'm not going to do it. Okay, guys, we should do it. Is this your first time? Yeah. Okay, good. And talk about what your experience is, what you met. Is that all right? How long have you been Yeah. You're both going to be in vision. We're just coming out again. I think the more conversation, the chat, the better. I'm good to go, yeah.
Everybody else, please.
And we'll...
I'll be right in. Good. So, Will and... You don't want it? Of course not. No, I don't want it. So Will and Nick from welcome. Let's start with Ocean Water. Just tell us a little bit about And who's taking note of this, what you're doing? I guess this segues into why you're here in Davos and who are you talking to and who wants to talk to you? And who's getting most inspired, would you say, here by what you guys are doing? Yeah, okay. And, interest is one thing for corporates and consultancies. Putting their money where their mouth is another. Are they doing that? Are they putting their money where their mouth is? Do you walk away from the Davos with some funding?
No, well, we're always very So the prizes are the contract. So do you go back to London energised after your first Davos? Yeah. Is there slightly unfair question? Is there also yeah, that's Oh, they're different, are they? Okay. Yeah. Do you work with United Nations? I did a lot of work. We did a big lesson the year before, which I was in Nairobi, and there's this amazing woman called Shireen Jordan. She runs this science business like Garzweiler, and you should definitely. Have you got a car? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, you should definitely talk to her. She's great, and we, I do stuff with them at COP as well. So, did you go to COP? Yeah. Were you in charge? Are you going to go to Dubai? Involved with some of the events? Okay, so what am I doing? Oh, good. Okay, well that's run by these guys. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I preach at. It's about intellectual. Yeah, they're telling to. It was
yeah, it's not. And I can't work out why, because it's not just the face, it's your voice. Yeah, because you have quite a sort of gentle voice. and I knew it immediately. I recognised it immediately. I've got to work this out now. It's driving me nuts. It may not be right. Thanks for taking care of it. Okay, I will. I'll try and work it out. If I think of it, I'll let you know. So what do you need? Do you need Michael? Okay. In London, yes. Between Shepherd's Bush and Chiswick. Okay, I'm just really going to drive me nuts. I might have to take a picture of it so I can be reminded myself. maybe it's my wife or kids, I don't know, maybe they may. Okay, so yeah, accent, AXE. Actually, let me give you my word. So dot, yeah, you might be sorry. Can I grab some discounts? And you're also...
Yeah, I mean, it's literally at the moment, we're just in a conversation. So he's massively the same.
Oh, what, my name, actually? Yeah, I haven't chosen. Oh, okay. I mean, it's quite Scandinavian accent. Yeah, no, German. It's good. Well, I mean, this is like the 15th time I've been here now. Just we used to have email addresses so like we haven't done this yet. So I'm actually I'm Kurt. So I'm not really, which is kind of nice. Yeah. So which I like. The climate stuff. I have this editorial lifestyle, so I lucky. And I feel very passionate. So I do as much of it as I can. Yeah, I like to read it.
It's cool what they're doing with the...
Yeah. And you studied excellent? Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So I got to Norway and then came back.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a really...
Yeah, great to meet you.
Well, it's very close to...
In London as well. Yeah, I'm in Bath.
No, it's just to meet. I mean, to study there was great. I almost went to Exeter, actually, No, that's exactly right. Yeah. Well, my daughter doesn't do very much. She's 17. She was talking about excellence.
We don't have
I went to Durham. It's the same thing.
There is.
I came from
Well, the good thing about cars is
But, yeah, I'm missing
if we meet, and he is the leader, quite. So it's his first time in Davos.
No, I live in
No, I don't like all that stuff. He said no. He said no.
Yeah, I will remember. It'll come to me. Good luck, guys.
All right, right. Oh, right, that's really good. That's really nice of you. No, as she knows, it was late yesterday. so this is I'm his PA. Honestly, I don't even know. My whole surname is gossip. All my surname is went to him.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I mean, it's clear what I'm actually talking about. What am I actually? Oh, it's the same one.
Stay about fashion. We can talk a little bit about British Airways. We can talk a little bit about the Men in Aside.
We've done some homework here.
Yeah.
No, look, I think. Oh yeah, of course. And that very serious news. I'm actually curious. So what is the big headline?
From here?
Yeah, this week. I'm curious.
I think, from my perspective, most of the sessions have something to do with cancer centre. They really do. I know there's a lot of high but it really seems like
Thank you. Can we send that to you?
There's a big
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I didn't. Wow.
So let's do this. Oswald's getting cold. But one thing I really want to do as well before we go is get a photo of my
Go to that. Absolutely.
Okay, where you
Pleasure.
And I had a
Actually, probably why I need to wake up. I went to Promenade 64 and had this thing. Really great music. I haven't come to Davos.
Live.
So exactly. So like, sure.
For the better.
Don't keep asking till it's filming.
We'll just have a chat.
Yeah. You've been coming for a while.
That's fine.
Isn't the sun stepping into the rock?
I hope so.
Okay, well then, let's talk about this. Are we happy? You're good to go?
Yeah, I'm set.
Welcome everyone, we're back.
This is really that usually gives me a real sigh of
You're
relief.
relaxed. Okay, here we go.
I'm live. Live.
Okay, we're still rolling.
Okay, stand by, and here we go. Here we go. And go.
Welcome everyone. You're back with Arctic Base Camp and Reuters. It started to snow there in Davos. I'm with Gail, of course, as always, founder of Arctic Base Camp, and we're delighted to have Oswald Boateng join us for this discussion. Great to see you. Look, you've been coming for a while to Davos. What's your role here this year? What's the big thing for you this year? And where do you think the whole Davos piece is going?
Interesting, our role changes every time. So, Canada is a wide world. What is it one culture?
So you say a mate in a good way, not that.
In a good way, enthusiasm.
But 16 years ago, was it the right thing? Because a lot of policymakers, a lot of big business. I don't know how many creatives have come in, I don't know how many young people have come in.
No doubt. But I can see the potential. Parties. and parties. So we should be given support to go out and that support is really that confident. We have huge assets and we should be able to develop that assets. And we should be able to borrow that assets, which is unfortunately a challenge.
A couple of things. We're outside. It's very cold and we're waiting on your things coat.
No, actually, I'm kind of getting used to it now.
Keeps us
years in, like, okay, that was it's cold.
Couple of things though. British Airways, Mike.
Yeah.
How big a part of developing that and how big a part of the process was the sustainability issue, sustainability and sustainable clothing? In fact, I believe I read somewhere there's.
I can say that.
You want to talk to the was there.
These are the new rules, so there needs to be an instrument to support
Last question. Okay, I made an example when it started. It was about reframing. Has it been reframed as well? Did somebody come in?
Number that I dare not, with my lovely friend of mine, into a second.
A second.
I don't know, a million bottles.
You know what? You were the third
Everyone
person in
is
a row
saying
that is saying a million bottles.
17. It's not too bad.
I
mean, it's not too good either.
Well,
like
you
10%.
I don't think so. I think we're here. Yeah.
All right.
17 times faster.
So what are you going to do? More capacity.
Yeah,
So
so
what do we do?
happiness is like 2030. Looking at your own as a designer.
We love you, Oswald!
Looking at your value chain and asking all the things you listen. Are they going to cut down on I said the same thing when I
Yeah, it was, because the thing is I understand it. I think we were all conscious, we all tried. We were driving on to the electric car, we were going great. So I think we're all aware and we want to do that. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is the back end industry itself. It's still shining this thing out.
All right. I got to finish. Oswald, thanks so much for chatting with us today. That's another one from Oxford Base, kind of a Reuters visit. Thank you so much. Can I grab that photo?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I've got to go grab my stuff. Yeah, Helen.
What's going on? It's STIs. Anna, you're going to bring a laptop up and we'll
Okay. Yeah.
I will ask them, and otherwise I'll ask someone else. Thanks a lot.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Aber der Ein- und Ausgang ist doch, wenn überhaupt, da.
Hey, man hört sich, man sieht sich, bis erwarten, bis ich da bin.
It looked staged.
You can
Is
leave.
it true?
It's okay.
How many
Yeah.
times did you rehearse your arrest, Greta? You had a PR agency film it several times. How many times did you film your arrest, and why was it staged that way?
Greta, considering you've not spent much time in school, how do you know so much about climate change?
Greta, maybe you want to talk to a real journalist. What did you do here in Davos? Was it successful?
Greta, as a real journalist, is climate change as real as your arrest?
Greta, can you tell us what's your main message that you want to give to people whilst you're here at the World Economic Forum, maybe?
Greta, how far are you willing to go? You're willing to break the law. Will you renounce violence?
Careful, people.
Will you renounce violence, Greta? Or do you support Antifa? You've worn an Antifa shirt before. Are you in favor of Antifa?
Greta, how did you get here today? What was your climate footprint in travelling here?
What's your plan while you're here, Greta?
Vibe. No.
Will we have a Fridays for Future demo tomorrow here?
Greta, how do you feel about discussing climate change with the delegates here when nearly all of them take private jets? Do you think at least the fact these delegates take private jets is a bad thing against, what you believe in? All of this could be done via Zoom, so surely you should be encouraging all the delegates here, especially the likes of US Special Envoy John Kerry for Special Envoy for climate change. Surely you should be saying to these people, you should do this via Zoom with a much smaller carbon footprint, surely? Greta, avoid my questions if climate change is a con.
Greta, what do you think about Bitcoin?
Well, I think that says enough.
Where are we going?
Watch
out, watch out.
I don't know where you're going.
What do you think about Bitcoin,
Greta, energy prices in Europe have never been higher. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Are you happy that natural gas is so expensive so people can't afford it, or do you think that's bad?
Greta, it's getting quite cold in Davos. When can I expect some global warming?
Greta, would you say you're a child actor? Are you a child actor or an expert? How would you describe yourself?
Greta, are there any climate actions planned whilst you're here with all the other activists?
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure people are planning things. Oh, careful, careful.
Greta, are you used to gentler questions, or do you ever talk to people who disagree with you?
Hello. What up, Greta? Greta, do you think in Davos climate change is the real issue for the big companies are here? Do you think they hear you?
Greta, who was filming your arrest in Germany? Because it looked like you did that in several takes, didn't you? You were posing with the police.
It was not posing, it was Reuters filming.
He's answering for you.
Come on,
he's answering for you. He said you had an agency.
It's not
Oh, sometimes I wish I had one. It would be much simpler than...
For black people. Who was filming you
do
then?
what you do for black people.
I don't
in
know.
America, we still
You don't know who was filming you in Germany?
We saving the environment.
He said he knows. He says it was an agency.
A news agency, you idiot.
Yeah, come on. Get out, really.
Free all our black
Do you normally have reporters defending you?
Greta, honestly, what are your plans while you're in Davos? There's word of a protest tomorrow. Do you know about it?
Let's talk about Germany again. How many times did you rehearse the arrest? Because I saw several versions of it. Don't you think you should answer? Because it seems like you're being a bit of a child actor and just doing a script, a movie script.
Yeah. It's very likely that the German police and our WEF fossil fuel company would stage an arrest.
Well, how many times were you arrested? Because you posed for several times, didn't you?
Can we talk about what black people are going through right now? Can we talk about what black people are going through right now?
Greta, can you tell us again what climate actions you're planning whilst you're here?
Can we talk about what our black people are going
What
through?
climate actions are you planning? Are there any protests, any things you're planning with the other activists whilst you're here?
She wants to go.
We're the only ones who's going to do it. Let them go.
We are...
Watch out, watch out, watch out.
Slippery. There are many different people planning different things. I don't know exactly everything.
Okay. What is your main message to the people who are at the World Economic Forum? What message do you want to portray?
Careful, because here there are cars.
How come you never protest Saudi Arabia or Russia? You only protest Western energy. Why have you never criticized Vladimir Putin or OPEC?
Yeah, I've never done that. Never,
Well,
ever.
will you do so now? Will you condemn OPEC energy?
Greta, can you condemn every single delegate that's come here on a private jet? Surely that's something you should condemn.
You can do it too.
I could do it, but you're the one who has such a strong stance against climate change. And, if it's true, I commend your efforts, but could you condemn them taking private jets to these meetings?
Why won't you condemn private jets? Have you ever been on a private jet even once?
I own 100 private jets.
Well, have you been on how about once? Have you ever been on a private jet?
All the time.
Do you have any meetings with any people here, any politicians, any high business people whilst you're here?
Depends on how you define that.
Well, can you tell us who you're having talks to?
No.
Why are you having secret meetings?
Greta,
Do you think that in Davos, the big companies here are really interested by climate change?
Well, I guess all we have to do is see what they do.
Let's get back to those private meetings. Why are you having private meetings? Secret meetings. Who are they having secret meetings with?
Come on, can you let other people ask questions?
Yes, please.
We had enough of
you believe them?
It's free speech, isn't it?
It is, but come on.
Are you fighting the establishment or are you now part of the establishment?
Hey, what are you doing?
I don't know where I'm going, so
We're just following your
That's not very smart. Yeah.
Are you planning to go up to the camp that's not right by Schwarzalp every year where some activists are staying?
I don't know.
How long are you staying here for?
I don't know.
Greta, what does the world have to do now in order to fight climate change?
Still, are they waited up?
There were words that you're going to meet the head of the IEA while you're here. Do you still have plans to do that?
We did just have a press conference with representatives from the IEA, so...
When it comes to solving things like climate change and heading in a different direction, do you agree with criminal damage caused by groups such as Just Oil? Just Stop Oil.
Greta, did you achieve what you wanted to do in Germany?
It's a very long struggle, so we don't... All we are trying to do is to do as much as we possibly can. And yeah, we will continue to fight to keep the carbon in the ground and for climate justice.
And do you know where you're heading to next?
Kind of.
Greta, this is your opportunity right here. You don't seem to be taking it very seriously.
Sorry?
This is your opportunity to stop and tell us what you care about, what you're fighting against. You seem to be joining the establishment, not fighting them anymore. Are you not one of them?
One of who?
What, the people on the private jets and the helicopters flying in here to tell us how to live our lives?
Yes, because I have many private jets of my own. Yes.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
I want to move here. What? Sorry. Okay. The point being, you have to condemn all of them equally, otherwise it's hypocrisy, right? No? I don't see how that's funny.
I don't take anything seriously, so I laugh all the time, so don't take it personally.
Okay.
Greta, where did you learn everything you know about things like climate change? Where did you learn all that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I knew.
So if you wish you knew, how do you know so much? Surely if you know so much, you would know where you learned all this from, surely?
Who has said that I know so much?
Well, because you are deemed as an expert worldwide when it comes to climate change.
No.
You speak on global stages when it comes to climate change, and ultimately some of the things you say lead global policy.
If that was the case, then the world would look completely different, I assure you.
What would you like to do to make the world look completely different? That's a fair question, surely.
First, I would like to eat lunch, maybe.
Are you going to be eating bugs to save the planet for this lunch?
I think I'm gonna take... I'll see.
Greta, can I ask you something about the open letter that you signed with other climate activists that already 850,000 people signed?
Sure.
So what's the main message of the letter? Why did you come here to the WEF to give that letter to someone? Why didn't you just do that online?
Basically the content of that letter is that we want no more fossil fuels because that's inconsistent with sticking to the 1.5 degree target.
Greta, do you make an opportunity to listen to different voices and opinions that differ from your own? Do you try and take challenge on board when it comes to climate?
Sure.
If you want to end fossil fuels, how did you get to Davos today?
I came yesterday, I didn't come today.
How did you travel here?
Several trains.
Several trains or planes?
I took a private jet, of course.
You took a private jet?
Yes.
I mean, you laugh about this, but surely if it's such a big issue, it's surely no laughing matter. I mean, this is an opportunity for you to try and get people who don't agree with your message to try and see it from your side of the view and to maybe change their ways, surely?
Yeah, I wish I could tell that to myself sometimes, to take things more seriously, but you know, I'm just a young person. I tend to laugh at most things.
Do you regret encouraging young people to miss school?
No. Does anyone have any idea where we are?
No.
I know where we are. You can tell us where you want to go, and I can tell you where to go.
Switzerland.
Yeah, that's a good
Maybe
Who operates your Twitter account? Who operates your Twitter accounts?
Oh, that's me. That's why it's so bad. I hate.
Are you the only
social
one
media.
who does it, or do other people help you?
Unfortunately, I'm the only one.
So no
that's
one
why
else
it's so bad.
And all your social media, do you write it, or does a PR agency write it?
It would be much easier if I had a PR agency that would write everything, to be honest.
I think you laugh when you're nervous, is that right?
Weird that people seem to care what I think about things so much.
For you, love it, don't you? You always put yourself out in the public. So you're not a private person, you love it. You're a celebrity. Are you a celebrity? Or a child actor? How would you describe yourself?
Who do you count as your chief advisors?
Siemens, LVD, Mercedes.
Yeah. Shell, Exxon, yeah.
It's quite something
Those
that
are
the
the people
media
who give
are
me-
answering the questions for you. That's amazing.
Well, you're asking her the same questions again and again.
You're asking the same questions and we get bored, you know?
Yeah.
And not only we, I guess. Maybe your audience.
Do you have any other climate activists that you know that are following you today to come up here to maybe...
Any other
climate activists who are coming up here, apart from Luetzerath and stuff and people that are already here? Do you know if there's groups coming up here to try and come here for some
I
type
hope so. I don't know everything that's going on.
Greta, who would you say is the biggest threat to climate change, whether that's one person, an organisation or a country?
Me.
And why would you say you're the biggest threat to climate change? Well, to the world going in a disastrous trajectory towards the world being damaged through climate change. Who do you think is the worst culprit?
Me.
Why you? Is it your hundreds of private jets?
Yes.
Wenn ich jetzt abstelle, was passiert?
Das Speichern.
Aber speichert wo? Aber auf der Karte. Und dann?
Where do you stand on climate? Where do you stand on China and their climate carbon footprint?
Yeah, as a climate activist, of course, you love when people emit carbon dioxide. Yeah, that's really our thing.
I mean, Greta, you're not taking this very seriously. This seems to be a big issue to you, unless it's just simply a job, in which case lining your pockets with lots of money. Surely you'd want to actually have an adult opinion on the likes of China, surely?
I have opinions about lots of things, yes.
Could you share your opinion on China with us?
Obviously, I love it when people emit carbon dioxide.
China's building coal-fueled power
We
stations.
love coal, yes.
So Greta Thunberg loves coal power plants.
Obviously, that's my legacy.
And on your hundreds of private jets, what sort of food do you serve? Bugs or steak?
Steak. All the time, of course. And baked beans.
Every time a Western government implements a net zero policy, it's common folk that are suffering, especially in a cost of living crisis. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, it's horrible that people are being affected by different things, like example the climate crisis and so on. People are being displaced and losing their lives. It's horrible.
But they can't afford to eat or heat their homes because of the net zero policies.
Yeah, that's definitely why we are experiencing the cost of living crisis, yes.
I agree, thank you.
Greta, do you have any thoughts about the World Economic Forum in general? Like, what do you think of this whole big meeting?
Yeah, you know, it's not led us anywhere specifically good, has it? We can only look at where we're headed, and these are the people who are in charge, the people who own the wealth and who are investing in fossil fuels, etc. So, and yet they are the ones we expect to solve the climate crisis when it's people are affected by it that we should be listening to.
You've been here before, you've had a big speech that made a proper impact. Do you think it did anything? Did anything change?
Well, we can only see where we are now. The global emissions of greenhouse gases are still increasing, but we are a movement that is growing.
Cars.
Yeah, careful.
But is the movement not turning people off, away from your cause?
Sorry?
Is the movement not turning people away from your cause? The tactics that are being employed?
Ingen aning, det får tiden säga, antar jag.
Do you agree with all the radical tactics people are taking in your name?
I think the only one taking action in my name is me, I hope.
But you are the leader of this movement.
I hope not.
Oh, it's getting easier.
No, I don't.
Therefore, would you condemn people taking radical action and prefer democracy instead?
Sorry?
Would you encourage people to take democratic action rather than radical action?
Das heißt, ihr müsstet jetzt Sprache
Protest is to take democratic action. Hi.
Greta, can you condemn everyone who has caused criminal damage in terms of to try and get the point across to fight climate change?
No, I left because there wasn't any people in there. Are you heading? You can leave. I don't know what to do.
Why should those in the West net zero when they are not doing their part?
It's kind of clean with snow. I don't, but yeah, might not be the smartest option.
Greta, you once stood on a stage and said, how dare you, passionately and emotionally, because people weren't doing it. Now you don't seem to be taking it seriously. Why the sudden change?
If you could say one thing to people who oppose you, to convince them, what would that be?
Sorry, where?
If you say one thing to people who oppose you, to convince them of your argument, what would it be? This is your chance to get people on side.
I wouldn't say anything.
Okay.
But surely if you cared about climate change that much, you would surely say something to try and get them to want to do something else about the way we are going towards climate change.
Oh.
You should see these people. No.
Yeah.
We have to get rid of the people and then we can continue. I don't think that's a good idea. Thank you, this has been a pleasure. We're gonna leave now. We would appreciate if you didn't follow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greta.
Thank you. Du musst jetzt durchlaufen lassen. Ja. Aber du bist sicher, dass ab Minute 1 bis zum Überspielen?
Ich glaube schon. Und du siehst schon gerade, wo du drauf gemacht hast.
Ich habe nicht.
Nein, der Play-Button. Wo du rausgenommen hast. Du ja eins. Oh, das läuft ja. Nein, du hast ja eins mal geregelt, oder? Ja, oder da. Ja. Aber ist das nicht bei dem rum, oder? Am Ding ist das. Okay, ich glaube, es ist schon ab da.
Okay, dann geht's.
Ja.
Okay.
Bye everyone.
Gib's hier bitte. Ich hab's.